Ladies and gentlemen, it is about damn time Arsenal finally signed a striker. And what better to go out there and buy one of the most informed strikers that we have seen in the last 2 seasons in Europe, in Viktor Gyökeres. Now, Ornstein has reported that there is an agreement in principle for a deal worth about 64 million euros, which is, I think, about 55 million pounds. And by the time this video actually comes out, that means Fabrizio must have here we go'd it, or there must have been some sort of final confirmation, because at the time of recording this video, the deal isn't done. It's still, Arsenal and Sporting are still going over the add-ons to finalize the deal. But it is, to be fair, as good as done, to be honest, in my opinion. I think this is about to happen any minute now, and I thought I might as well make a video out of it, kind of going over, I guess, the saga, the pros and cons, everything about it. And you know what it is with Gyökeres? He's probably one of the most talked about strikers, but talked about in the sense where there's a big spectrum. Now, the spectrum being he's rated so highly. He's people call him the best striker in the world at the moment. People really rate him highly on that end of the spectrum. Whereas the other spectrum kind of says, okay, he did it in Portugal. Can he hack it in the Prem? Can he hack it in La Liga? Can he kind of translate those goals and assists into the bigger leagues, with all due respect? To be fair, I hear both sides. I'm not going to lie. I really do. I'm kind of more sided towards, I guess, the higher end of the spectrum rather than the lower end, because I'm an optimist in that sense. That's pretty much why I'm making this video, because I kind of want to go over the two sides of the story and how I think, I guess, Gyökeres can kind of fit into this Arsenal team. Now, I think the saga being over has kind of put some Arsenal fans to bed well. I think that Arsenal fans obviously had this predicament, and not only Arsenal fans, to be fair, the board, Arteta, the club in itself, they had this predicament whether to go with Sesko or Gyökeres. And literally week in, week out, we'd hear different stories about, oh, Arsenal are going to move into Sesko this week, Arsenal are going to move into Gyökeres this week, and it'd literally be like that since January. The fact that it's finally done is a good thing, and I think that Arsenal have kind of put their foot down in the transfer market in the sense where they have finally got out and bought what they have been kind of missing in the last couple months or so, or the last year, 2 years, whatever you want to call it. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say I watch Sporting Lisbon and I've been watching them week in, week out. No, I'm an honest football fan. I haven't. But what I can tell you is that I've watched so many of his highlights. I've watched him in the Champions League against big teams. I think his goals and assists kind of tell a story about him. They kind of tell his skill level. They tell a lot about him. And I think that he is someone who is a very different player to Sesko. He's obviously a lot older. He's less raw. He's more of the finished article. Where Sesko is kind of still in the baby stages of his career. He's only 21. He's raw. He's athletic, but still he lacks that, finished article. Now, in my opinion, I do think that Arsenal have picked the better striker here. Between the two. And this has nothing to do, I don't have anything against Sesko. I think he's a fabulous player. I just think that Gyökeres is someone that Arsenal needs right now in this current moment. Because when you look at a player like Viktor Gyökeres, he's a killer in front of goal. He's someone that, he loves scoring goals. He has a hunger for it. You could see how he is in and around the box in his highlight compilations, or I don't know if you guys watch Sporting Lisbon week in, week out, but he's so adamant to score goals. He's always willing to make runs in behind. He has that relentless mentality of him to actually be a killer in front of goal, because I do think that that's the type of striker he is. Just looking at it straight up, that is exactly what Arsenal have been needing for the last season, for the last 2 seasons, you can call it. If you had looked at the way Arsenal had played last season, there were countless times where these guys would rack up countless numbers of XG throughout a game. It could be 3xG, it could be 4xG, it could be 2xG, but they'd end up either scoring 1 or they just wouldn't score at all, because they lack that prolific number 9 finish up top. And I think that's exactly why Arsenal fans, the club, even fans who weren't kind of associated with Arsenal at all, they knew exactly what Arsenal needed. The amount of times, for example, where Arsenal would be on an attack, they'd put a ball into the box, kind of across the keeper, into the corridor of uncertainty, and there'd be no one there to tap it. The amount of times Saga would do that, Martinelli would do that. And it also kind of hindered Ødegaard's ability to play balls in behind, as he does so well, to feed in a proper number 9 striker who kind of meet those runs and kind of be a nuisance to that defense. It's something that Arsenal have been lacking for the longest time, and I think that for the fact that they've finally opened their eyes and realized what they were missing and go out and buy a striker this late into Arteta's phases, it's a bit disappointing, I can't lie. But the fact that they've finally come to the conclusion and actually understood that, okay, yeah, we need a striker now, and they've gone out and bought one of the most informed strikers there is. So it's good that this deal's finally over the line, and honestly, it was just frustrating to watch. It was frustrating to watch that they just couldn't simply put the ball in the back of the net. And someone like Viktor Gyökeres, he can certainly do that. And I think Arsenal were probably the team that had or accumulated one of the highest XGs in the Premier League, and they ended up scoring probably as many goals as Brighton last season. So in that sense, this move is kind of a no-brainer to me. A lot of people were talking about how Gyökeres is a risk. He's 27. He did it in Sporting, but can he do it in the Premier League? It's a big risk to sign him. But I honestly think it's a risk worth taking because of the price. The fact that they've paid £55 million for a man who's scored over 50 goals this season, I think that's fantastic business from Arsenal. Genuinely, I think that's great business from the club, from the board, from Berta, Arteta, whoever was in charge of the deal. I think it's fantastic business because when you compare his price tag to the likes of like other strikers in Europe, like Šeško, like Isak, like Ekitike, all the hot prospects right now, Gyökeres is he's by far the cheapest, and he's scored almost double the goals as all of them this season. So if you see like Isak, Isak's going for like 130, 140 million pounds at the moment. Ekitike is around 100 million. Šeško, Leipzig want about 90 or 100 million for him, which is absolutely crazy in my opinion. So I think Arsenal have done really well here. I think they've kind of saved their war chest in the summer to go out and buy someone like Gyökeres. And yeah, I get the risk of him coming from Sporting, him coming from a less competitive league compared to the Premier League, but I think just with that output he put out in the last 2 seasons, I think it's an absolute risk worth taking. Let's just say Gyökeres doesn't work out. He's a flop. He doesn't perform to the standards that Arsenal want him to. It's only 50 million down. Imagine they had signed someone like Isak, someone like Šeško for 100 million plus. That's as much as like they spent on Declan Rice, or even more, and he turns out to be a flop. The entire fan base would go absolutely ballistic. And I think that most importantly from his pros, he just offers something different to the Arsenal front line. Now, I know I said the same thing for Madueke, but something that's different from Gyökeres and Madueke in terms of what they both offer in attack is that Gyökeres is something that Arsenal have been missing for the last 6 or 7 years. Literally since the last time Giroud played for Arsenal, in my opinion. Now, what do I mean by that? Gyökeres is someone who's a bully to defenders. He's someone that's defenders kind of have a nightmare to defend against him. You could tell by the way he plays right now at Sporting. He literally occupies defenders' spaces. He gets in behind really well. He's a bully in the box. He's a bully boy to defenders, in my opinion. Last season, we saw that Arsenal played a lot of low block teams. Teams that would just kind of sit back, absorb pressure, sit in the box, and they'd be happy to do that. We saw it against Inter. We saw it against many Premier League teams. We saw it against United in the FA Cup. Arsenal would just dominate the ball, but they dominate the ball just outside the box, and literally the teams that they'd be playing against would just camp inside the box and make it really, really hard and make it really stressful for Arsenal to score goals. They'd frustrate them. And I think that having someone like Gyökeres in the box to kind of shrug off and bully defenders, when Saga and Madueke, whoever they sign on the left, or Martinelli, whoever it is, when they'd be feeding balls into the box, Gyökeres is there. He's there. He can get ahead of defenders. He's big. He's strong. He's physical. He has that presence in the box that Arsenal have kind of lacked. Now, I know Havertz has kind of been doing that over the last 2 seasons, but I think it's fair to say that I don't think Havertz can do what Gyökeres can do. Simple as I think Gyökeres can do exactly what Havertz does, but just infinitely better in my opinion. And I do rate Havertz. I think he's a very intelligent footballer, but I just think that Arteta has been forced to play him out of position. To be honest, I think Arteta has kind of gotten the most out of Havertz. He's juiced him the most, not gotten him over the line. But a signing like this, in my opinion, this can get Arsenal over the line, and this can just simply end the Arsenal drought and hunger for a trophy. And who knows, with a signing like Gyökeres, they just simply could lift the Premier League trophy. They're so close. They've been so close the last 2 seasons, and this could be that final piece of the puzzle. Now, let's talk about his cons. And I do think that his cons are a lot less than his pros, in my opinion, but I feel like the cons are worth talking about specifically because of the style of play between the 2 leagues. Now, as many of you may know, Gyökeres scores a lot of his goals via transitions. And I kind of hear that argument. I really do. But I'm an optimist in terms of this situation. I do think that if you do slot Gyökeres and his skill set and his intelligence as a striker and just drop him into that number 9 spot and let everyone do their job around him and continue the way they're playing, I do think that his goals will somewhat translate. And it may not be obviously 50 or 60 GA a season or 70 GA a season, whatever numbers he's been putting up over the last 2 seasons. But I do think that it will be a lot better than what people are saying because he only plays transition football. Because when I think about it, right, and when I'm thinking logistically, I'm like, do you really think that Mikel Arteta doesn't have a plan for a man who has scored 102 goals in 97 games? The same Mikel Arteta who put Kai Havertz up front for 2 seasons and almost won the league. The same Mikel Arteta who put Mikel Merino as a number 9 for the latter half of the season and schooled Real Madrid across 2 legs with him being up front in both legs, with him scoring and assisting in both legs. I mean, come on guys. Arteta is an unbelievable manager, and I do think that there's a case of inevitability. I don't think it's a question of will Gyökeres score. I honestly think it's a question of how many can Gyökeres score under Arteta. Because in my eyes, Arsenal have signed a killer up front. Something that they've been needing for the last 2 years, and they finally got their hands on him. So that's my optimism side. I do think that there's obviously more analysis that goes into it, but that's just my personal opinion. Agree to disagree. The last point I kind of want to make about his cons is, I guess, his technical ability. When you compare that ability to the likes of like Isak, Ekitike, Shesko, he isn't as technical, but maybe in terms of, link up play, how he's able to link up with Odegaard, with Saga, with other players in the team like Declan Rice, he kind of needs to have that technical flair in Arsenal because they love these quick passes, they love these, quick movements. Arsenal players are very technical, and I do think that they play in a very technically heavy play style. I do think that could be a factor that could affect his gameplay, that could affect his, style of play, which could obviously eventually affect his output. Because when you look at Gyökeres, he's bulky, he's big, he's not someone who's great, he's not world class with his feet, When I think of technical strikers, I think of someone like Suarez. I think of someone like, Lewandowski. So, Benzema. Those guys are good with their feet. They love, dribbling. Now, obviously, I'm not comparing Gyökeres, to the likes of them. It is a huge factor that has to be considered when translating his output from the Portuguese league to the Premier League. And I think that someone who's kind of giving him hope in this situation is Haaland. Because Haaland isn't technically gifted as well. He's not technically gifted like some of the other strikers in the world at the moment. But Haaland is a freak of nature. I don't think he should be considered as a sample size in this because what he's done in the Premier League, I mean, he's literally gone down in history now. Breaking the goal record in the first season is absolutely mental. So I don't think you can kind of use Haaland as an example to back up this, claim of his technical translation to the Premier League. But like I said, under Arteta, I think Arteta's a great coach. I think he'll kind of bring out a new side to Gyökeres that we kind of haven't seen before. Yeah, honestly, I'm just excited. I'm excited to see where Arsenal can finally go now that this deal has been complete. Now that they finally have their missing pieces of the puzzle, guys. Now that they signed them, I do think that they are serious contenders. So, but it's only July. You can't say too much at the moment. But yeah, that'll be the end of the video, guys. I just kind of wanted to talk about the Gyökeres news. I think it's quite big. So, hope you guys have enjoyed the video. Leave a like. Subscribe if you haven't already. All my socials are in the description below. And if you guys are a fan of, short form content, follow my Instagram at 90+ Narain. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.